What's up, fam? How's it going?
A long time no see. Disgusting,
At least it came out that end.
I guess.
So, week 2 spooky season.
Yeah, week 2.
This episode's less spooky.
Yeah, but still interesting and kind of fits the vibe.
I'm going to go ahead and preface my portions with I'm trying a new way of doing this, where for me, I feel like it's going to flow a little bit easier because it opens for more discussion and it's less of me reading word for word off a page.
Yeah.
So, you want to just get right on into it?
Sure.
All right. So we're doing like celebrities who went missing.
Yeah.
Who
vanished without a trace.
There you go. So my first one is Richey Edwards. He vanished in 1995. So Richey Edwards was, hold on. I said I was ready. Come on. There we go. So Richey Edwards was like a musician. He's a Welsh musician. He was in the band Manic Street Preachers. He one of the articles that I used says, imagine if Lord Byron, Sid Vicious, and a moody teenager all managed to magically stew their sperm to create a hybrid baby.
Oh no.
And it would be this dude. So he's like he's a mid-1990s British rock idol. But basically, he was declared legally dead in 2008, but his body never surfaced. It said he had become moody and dreamy. He started writing lyrics about like depression and stuff like that. And then he was like doing a whole bunch of like disturbing publicity stunts. And then some music magazine kind of said that the band's posturing was, the band's posturing was insincere, and that Edwards had grabbed a razor blade and carved "for real," like the number 4 and the word "real," into his own arm. He went missing in February of 1995. You know, everybody just kind of thought it was like a publicity stunt type thing. But that's not what it was. He just kind of up and gone. And like I said, was supposed to be flying to the US. But he disappeared from his hotel room.
Yeah.
And his car was found later abandoned. And he, like I said, he was declared dead in 2008, but they never found his body. They think that he was, like, the whole situation was staged. But there's no proof behind it. But, like, if you read through his life, it kind of looks like it was, like, he had that whole moody thing going for him.
So it was probably like he wandered off to unalive himself.
Right.
That's kind of what it sounds like.
And if you've never heard any of like their stuff, think the stuff that he wanted to make was like, this says like he expressed a desire to create an album described as Pantera meets Nine Inch Nails meets Screamadelica. But I don't think he ever made it to that point.
No.
So,
well,
that's that.
Well, my first one's probably one you've never heard of, because I'd never heard of her either. Dorothy Harriet Camille Arnold was born to a wealthy perfume importer and was the niece of a Supreme Court justice, and to outsiders, she had everything she could ever want. In the months leading up to her disappearance, her family noticed that the unmarried 25-year-old seemed to be craving independence. And in the fall of 1910, she had asked her father for permission to get her own apartment in Greenwich Village, which was a haven for artists. She was a literature graduate from Bryn Mawr College. Her father was not supportive of this venture, according to a story in American Heritage's 1960 story called The Girl Who Never Came Back. From the Upper East Side mansion that she lived in, Dorothy would write several short stories and even sent them off for publication. Poinsettia Flames and Lotus Leaves were the two stories she submitted, and McClure's magazine rejected the first, and she reportedly never heard back from the second. Dorothy would often write with George S. Griscom Jr., who was older than her, and in a letter to him she wrote of McClure's rejection, saying, "Failure stares me in the face. All I see ahead is a long road with no turning." She also included a line that was reportedly the reason that her mother believed her daughter would eventually return. "Mother will always think an accident has happened." In December of 1910, Dorothy Arnold told her mother that she wanted her to stay home that day. Dorothy said, "I will telephone you," as she headed out into New York City for some dress shopping on her own. Walking down Fifth Avenue, she stopped at Park and Tilford for some chocolates, and then she made her way along the streets to Bernado's bookstore to purchase Emily Calvin Blake's Engaged Girl sketches, and telling a friend in passing that she would return home through Central Park. This was December 12th, 1910, and she was not seen again. On that day, she was dressed in a blue skirt suit with her hair in a very full pompadour under a black velvet hat with blue silk roses. She was also said to carry a large black fox flat muff with white points, along with $20 or $30, cards, and possibly other papers of various kinds. Dorothy made headlines across the country, with the Times heralding the case as one of New York's greatest mysteries, 40 years after it happened. In January, the New York Police Commissioner had mailed 3 portraits of Miss Arnold to all of the surrounding towns and cities. The portraits included one of her in a walking costume, another in evening dress, and the third was a bust portrait. Police said that they had minutely searched without result for the 5'4" Dorothy, who had dark brown hair, grayish blue eyes, bright complexion, and good color. They went on to say that every steamer for Europe has been traced and the passengers scrutinized. There were sightings of Dorothy in Philadelphia, Muskogee, Oklahoma, and San Antonio, Texas, but none of these turned out to be her. After finding the letter with Griscom, Dorothy's mother and brother traveled to Italy, where the family lawyer would have to make a statement not denying that the brother had gone to punch Griscom in the face and then followed up with another hit that knocked him to the floor. He was able to secure the letter that Dorothy had sent to Griscom, which Griscom had been carrying in his pocket. And in my notes, I included one of the photos of her. It was found that Dorothy and Griscom had spent a week together in Boston just a few months prior to her going missing, and while there, she had pawned $500 worth of her jewelry to a pawnbroker who later spoke to the press. In April of 1914, there were 2 doctors and a nurse who were arrested in Pennsylvania for operating a private hospital that offered abortions out of a Bellevue, Pennsylvania home. It was found that there was an operating table in the cellar along with 2 large furnaces. Later, one of the doctors claimed that Dorothy had been cremated after what can only be presumed was a botched abortion. From early on, Dorothy's father publicly claimed his belief that his daughter was dead, but descendants of the family recently said that he did end up spending $1 million to search for her, and he only stopped looking when he died. Over a decade after Dorothy vanished from Fifth Avenue, the head of the Bureau of Missing Persons in New York announced that the case had been solved and that Dorothy Arnold is no longer listed as a missing person, but he would have to recant that statement very soon after. Dorothy's case is the oldest missing persons case included in the Charlie Project, which is a database of over 15,000 missing persons cases. The family's lawyer told the Times, "The disappearance of Dorothy is as much of a mystery today as the day she disappeared, and it remains that way 114 years after she vanished. Honestly, she probably hightailed it. She probably got out of Dodge. She was like, I don't care about the money or the status. I don't want to be a socialite. And she just went and had a normal life. Right. That's what I'd like to imagine for her.
Right. All right. So my next one is Jim Sullivan, and he's a musician. If you've never heard that name.
I almost did him. He's been on one of my lists for quite some time, yeah.
Well, I'm just going to briefly, and if you want to hit it harder later, you can.
No, because I've struggled with writing it, so.
So basically, he's the very definition of a cult artist. So he only released 2 albums, one of which was UFO, and the other one, what was the name of that one? It was self-titled, Jim Sullivan. But neither one of them really gained any interest. He had set out, he was going to travel from California to Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Where he was, if he had made it to Nashville, he was going to make it big.
Right.
And, a lot of the interviews and stuff with people that knew him said that had he made it, it would have been his big break. But basically, he left out in his Volkswagen Beetle with all of his stuff. He got pulled over on his way there.
Yeah.
And they thought he was drunk, but he passed the sobriety tests. After he got pulled over and they let him go, he stopped and got a bottle of vodka, kept going. All of a sudden, a couple days later or whatever, they found his car, but not him. His car had all his stuff, including his guitar. And it was said that if he was going to just vanish,
he would have taken
his guitar with him. So basically, it's at the point where nobody really knew what had happened.
Yeah.
And fittingly, it being in California, people are wondering if it wasn't like a UFO situation.
Yeah, because he was like obsessed with aliens.
Yeah.
And I think, there's like speculations that he was abducted. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was also speculated that it had something to do with the police or the mafia, something along those lines. But alien abduction seemed to be a big hit on that one.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to have seen him make it bigger.
Yeah.
Mine are short.
As per usual, mine are not.
Right. My shit's always short. And it's not because I don't give a shit.
Well, mine appear longer just because of the way that I write.
Right.
My mind blanked. On March 1st, 1904, future band leader and musician Glenn Miller was born in Clarinda, Iowa. As a child, he started out playing the mandolin, but quickly switched to the horn. During his childhood, his family moved around several times until they finally settled in Colorado in 1918. He attended high school in Fort Morgan, Colorado, and Miller was in the school band. After graduating in 1921, he decided to become a professional musician and joined Boyd Center's orchestra. He quit the orchestra in 1923 to go to college, but after just 1 year, he quit college and went back into music and moved to Los Angeles, California, where he worked with Ben Pollack's band for some time. He then moved to New York City, where he was a freelance trombonist and musical arranger, and in 1934, Miller became the musical director for Tommy Dorsey's band with his brother Jimmy Dorsey. The first time he recorded under his own name was in 1935, and he struggled for several years to make a name for himself as a musician and bandleader, forming and reconfiguring his own orchestra until he found the perfect rhythm. The band had a gig at the famed Glen Island Casino in New Rochelle, New York, in 1939, and this is what helped to put him on the map, and the performances were broadcast on the radio, which gave them excellent exposure to the public. His first hit was Wishing Will Make It So, and then he wrote one of his most successful singles, Moonlight Serenade, which climbed the charts in 1939, which I will play a brief snippet of, because I forget what the copyright rules are, but I think his music is now free. It's this song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Let me get back to my notes. And then the band had a distinctive swing jazz style, which made Miller and his orchestra the top dance band in America. And they would dominate the charts with hits such as In the Mood, Tuxedo Junction, and Pennsylvania 65000 in 1940. And then his other most recognizable song, I will play briefly. Just so you know who I'm talking about. In 1941, Miller made his first film entitled Sun Valley Serenade with Sonia Henney. This film featured another one of his signature songs, Chattanooga Choo Choo. And in 1942, he would appear in the film Orchestra Wives, but that same year, he decided to put his very successful music career aside in order to serve his country in World War II. Despite being well into his 30s by this time, he would most likely not have been drafted, but he was inducted into the U.S. Army, and he later transferred to the Army Air Force. During this time, he headed up the U.S. Army Air Force Band and gave numerous performances to entertain the troops. He also participated in counter-propaganda campaigns against the Nazis. In some recordings from the time, Miller speaks German, phonetically pronouncing words specifically for a German audience. In 1944, he was stationed in England when he learned that his band was to go to Paris, France. On December 15th, Miller boarded a transport plane that was headed to the newly liberated French capital, and he intended to make preparations for his group's new series of concerts there. But he never arrived. Neither the plane or Miller's body have ever been recovered. He left behind his wife Helen and their 2 children. The military band continued to play for months after his presumed death, and the Glenn Miller Orchestra was revived after the war as a way to honor his legacy. Collections of his music did very well on the charts for several years after his disappearance as well, and the film that was loosely based on his life, called The Glenn Miller Story and starred Jimmy Stewart as Glenn, was successful when it was released in 1954. However, a researcher claims that he can put to rest the mystery surrounding Miller's disappearance. He points to long overlooked military documents that indicate that a small plane in which Miller was most likely traveling crashed into the English Channel after the fuel intakes froze, according to Dennis Sprague, a senior consultant to the Glenn Miller Archive at the University of Colorado in Boulder. The icing took 3 forms: engine icing, carburetor icing, and induction ice, and that's the kind of ice that forms on the fuel tanks and fuel lines feeding fuel to the engine. Sprague says that the plane was flying low due to poor visibility, and when the fuel lines froze, the engine stopped, which would have only given the pilot about 8 seconds to react before plunging into the water. With the plane being constructed from primarily lightweight materials, it most likely disintegrated upon impact and would have killed everyone on board instantly. These propaganda broadcasts wait a minute. Did I put this in the wrong place? I think I did. think that whole statement. Never mind. I'm going to skip to the next one. At the request of Stephen Davis Miller, Glenn's son, Spragg had launched his investigation in 2009. Unfortunately, Stephen passed away in 2012, still not having the full story as to whatever happened to his father. Spragg said Steve was pretty much fed up with having spent most of his adult life dealing with conspiracy theories, and he said, I trust you to take the ball on this thing and go with it. And if you want to do it, will you please go study this situation, go anywhere you need to go, open any files you need to open, ask for permission to go anywhere you can, but find out what really happened. There is a PBS episode called History Detective Special Investigations, The Disappearance of Glenn Miller, that as of writing this, I plan to watch, and hopefully I actually will this time, but I absolutely did not. So that's that.
Wow. So my next one is Barbara Newhall Follett. She was like a child prodigy. She was like a child genius. Wow. So she actually started writing her first book at 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
It was later titled The House Without Windows. It was, I think it was published when she was around 13.
Yeah.
She had done it as a present for her mom, for her birthday, and she had used like a small portable typewriter that she was given.
Mm-hmm.
The story was about a young girl who ran away from home and her family to live in nature with her animal friends. But like when she had originally started to write it, the original manuscript got burned in a house fire, so she had to rewrite the entire story. Her father was an editor for a publishing house at the time and supervised the publication in 1927. But so later on, she wrote another big book, The Voyage of Normandy. Mm-hmm. She had written a couple books, and a lot of them were about like trips that she had taken, adventures that she had gone on. She liked to like be out in nature and hike and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So she did a lot of writing, and then all of a sudden she had to stop because the Great Depression hit. Her dad actually ended up leaving her and her mom penniless for a younger woman.
Oh, no. What a butthead.
So she was, by 16, she was working as a typist and fending for herself, basically, and she never wrote again. In 1939, she was 26 years old. She had an argument with her husband. She had gotten married in 1931. Nickerson Rogers was her husband. They did a bunch of like excursions and hikes and stuff like that. She met him in 1931. They got married in 1934. And she still wrote little bits here and there, but it was never really took off, didn't make it to the publishers or whatever. They didn't like it.
Yeah.
Nick had met another woman.
No.
And so then they stayed together, and then, they moved to try and start a new life, whatever. Well, then, according to her husband, on December 7th of 1939, she left their apartment after they had an argument. She had very little money in her pocket. This says she had $30, which is the equivalent to $657.
I was going to say, that was a lot of money.
Yeah, but she was never seen again. However, her husband didn't report it for like 2 weeks. And he really did nothing to even try and find her. They questioned him, but nothing was really found. There was a theory that her body was found, but it wasn't identified correctly. And there is a writer, Daniel Mills, that says that he's found evidence that she was discovered in November of 1948, but was misidentified as another missing individual by the name of Elsie Whitmore, who had disappeared in 1936. But so there's theory out there that she was found. But as of yet, she hasn't been found. Nothing about her has been found.
Damn. That man really got away with murder.
He really did.
That's crazy. Was that it?
Yep.
For that one? Born Elizabeth Eaton Converse on August 3rd, 1924 in Laconia, New Hampshire, Connie Converse was the second of 3 children born to a minister and an accomplished pianist. The only music allowed in the Converse home was religious or classical music, and dancing, alcohol, card playing, and any mentions of the word sex were strictly forbidden. There is not much evidence as to what occurred within the Converse home, but there were some clues that Connie would write in letters and in her diary, as well as in her talks with others. A letter written in the 1950s that she wrote about her older brother Paul's mental health issues and the opinion of his psychotherapist seemed to conclude the following. Paul's basic problem seems to have been a dominating mother, from whom he felt he had somehow to escape or else be annihilated. Anyway, one may envision that somewhere inside himself he is still fleeing down a long dark corridor from that genteel, insistent, and horrendous voice. Voice is capitalized, by the way. Well, I'm reading in my own reactions. Maybe it wasn't the voice that got him, but as for me, I have long that if mother had been stricken mute, say back in 1920, Harvard Street would have been a lovelier place to live in. And maybe that's why I'm a notorious mute myself. Connie was a brilliant student and attended the alma mater of her mother and grandmother, Mount Holyoke College, on a scholarship, but she would eventually drop out, much to her family's dismay. Her younger brother, Philip, said that her whereabouts were sparse over the next 5 years, but she eventually materialized in New York City. Here, without a label, publicist, or an agent, she became the prototype of today's DIY songwriter, making her own recordings in her 400 square foot Greenwich Village apartment, where she didn't manage to break through because the music industry did not know quite what to do with her yet. And there is a photo of her in New York at Riverside Park in April of 1946. In June 1949, she picked up an editorial job at the Institute for Pacific Studies and was a published author for the first time in Far East Survey, which was a bi-monthly academic journal of Asian studies. Her short essay was on Papua and New Guinea, but her subsequent works were longer and on India, Formosa, Micronesia, and other topics. In the fall of that year, the first of Connie's cartoons were also published in the Saturday Review of Literature. She was also writing poetry, painting, taking road trips, and teaching herself how to play the guitar. This was the time that she began to introduce herself around New York as Connie, which was a nickname that was given to her by some of her New York friends. She was thrilled with the newfound talent of playing the guitar and began to write profusely, and eventually had a collection of 40 songs that she had written. She would set her favorite poems to music, write love songs of her own, and even dabbled in feminist anthems like Roving Woman. She found herself in a cohort with other young Greenwich Village musicians, one of whom was a man named Pete Seeger. Connie began to record her songs in her Grove Street apartment with the help of Jean Deach, I think that's Deach, who was a young World War II vet and music enthusiast. In her tiny kitchen that she called an afterthought kitchen, which I have also been known to use that term for my own kitchen, her and Jean would use his 404 tape recorder. Jean became so enthralled with Connie's music that he would record her at his home in Hastings-on-Hudson and sometimes have friends and admirers come watch her. He wrote, "There were many better singers than Connie, but few were as intelligent or literate or beautiful. Her songs still haunt me. At a time when American folk music was dominated by traditional political songs that were sung mostly by men, like Bob Dylan, Connie was a solo acoustic female singer-songwriter and was not an accepted concept. But Jean said that Connie Converse was 50 years ahead of her time. Though Connie had ambitions to be a singer-songwriter, she did not play any real-life shows, but in 1954 she was able to secure a spot on Walter Cronkite's CBS morning show thanks to a connection of Deitch. Unfortunately, there are no existing recordings of her performance of a few of her songs, but there are some screenshots that exist. When Connie wasn't writing or recording, she was trying to get her music in front of as many people in the music industry as she could. It was expected that the appearance on CBS would put her in the spotlight, but nothing came from it. No acclaim, no recording contracts, nothing. In January of 1961, she became frustrated by her inability to find the right audience for her music, and so she turned her back on the music scene. She left New York for Ann Arbor, Michigan, and landed herself a job at the University of Michigan doing secretarial work and writing for the Journal of Conflict Resolution. She also was a champion for social justice and worked against police brutality. It appears that during this time she had quit writing songs altogether. In the summer of 1974, just before she turned 50, she composed several letters to her family and friends, saying, "Human society fascinates me and awes me and fills me with grief and joy. I just can't find my place to plug into it. So let me go, please, and please accept my thanks for those happy times that each of you have given me over the years. And please know that I would have preferred to give you more than I ever did or could. I am in everyone's debt." She said that she had plans to head west to start over. She packed up her Volkswagen Beetle and drove out of Ann Arbor. And this was the last time that she was ever heard from or seen again, and her whereabouts remain a mystery. About 10 years after she disappeared, her younger brother Phil hired a private investigator to find his sister. He was very close with her, and he was desperate to find her. But Phil questioned whether or not this is what Connie would want after something the private investigator said to him. "Look, I might well find your sister, but you need to know that if I find her, that doesn't mean she's coming back. It doesn't mean that she'll talk to you. If I find her and she doesn't want you to know about it, then I can't tell you about it. It's her right to disappear."
See, I like it. Yeah. People got to do what they got to do.
People can't do that. You can't just vanish anymore.
No, you can't. You know what? Funny. I almost did like a funny situation, and I almost did like a whole one on Jenna Marbles because she just like vanished.
Yeah, but I mean,
we know where she is.
We know where she is, and
she's alive and well.
Yeah,
but she just like up and vanished from the internet. Like there is no internet presence of her. I do too, so much. All right,
I hope she's doing okay.
I mean.
And I hope she's happy.
Julian still posts from time to time.
Oh, he streams on Twitch all the time.
Yeah. My next one is BISON DELE. I don't know. He's a professional basketball player, or was a professional basketball player. He played for several teams, including the Orlando Magic, Denver Nuggets, Los Angeles Clippers, Chicago Bulls, and Detroit Pistons. It's believed that he was murdered at sea by his older brother in 2002, along with his girlfriend and the skipper on the boat. But it's not been confirmed. He reportedly at one point dated Madonna. In his career, he played saxophone. Why you gotta call me out like that? He played saxophone, violin, and trumpet. So he's kind of like he's a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
But so he, along with sports and all that, he did a whole lot of traveling, which was why he was on the boat in the first place. But he kind of like left the U.S. and went to Australia. He learned to sail, bought a boat. He named it the Hakuna Matata. And he said that he was going to sell it from Tahiti to Hawaii. So on July 7th of 2002, he set off with his girlfriend, the captain, and his older brother, but they never made it to Hawaii. Him, his girlfriend, and the captain were never seen again. 2 months later, his brother was arrested in Phoenix trying to buy gold with one of his brother's checks.
Oh.
And then the brother, when he was released on bail, killed himself via insulin overdose just across the Mexican border.
Oh no!
And so the bodies of them of the missing three were never found.
Wow.
But it said that his brother was like a kind of violent dude.
Yeah.
He was bitter. Brother. Yeah. He was prone to violence and he was very jealous of his brother's success. And so it's not far-fetched to think that this is something that he could have done.
No, not at all.
But dude's pretty impressive. And I mean, pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Like the basketball player dude.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't looked him up, look him up. His last, not you personally, because I know you don't give two shits about a basketball player, but his last name is spelled DELE, in case you don't know. But I was like reading about him.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this dude is impressive.
Yeah.
That's it for that one.
So y'all remember back during the pandemic when nobody had anything to do except watch TikToks and Tiger King on Netflix, and we all had that song Carol Baskin killed her husband, whacked him.
I did not
stuck in our heads.
I did not even.
Don Lewis was born on April 30th, 1938, and was a millionaire living in Tampa, Florida, with his wife Carol. Don's first marriage was to Gladys Lewis. Gladys Lewis, and was still married to her when he met his future second wife, Carol. Gladys and Don raised a family together, and their daughters say that they had a happy childhood and that their father had a passion for animals, saying that they always had a variety of animals. His youngest daughter, Gail Rathbone, was quoted as saying, "We would come home from school and there'd be a baby alligator swimming in the bathtub."
But like, let's be for real, that'd be cool. That'd be cool as hell. Just to come home to a new pet all the time. And it's not just like a cat or a dog.
Right.
It's a freaking alligator.
Though the children reported growing up in a good environment, things were not perfect within the confines of the Lewis home. Gladys said that her husband had multiple affairs, including a nearly 10-year affair with Carol. In 1990, Gladys and Don divorced, and 1 year later he was married to Carol, and they would found the Wildlife on Easy Street Animal Sanctuary, where they would raise tigers and other exotic animals. The honeymoon phase wouldn't last too long for the couple, and they began to disagree over what to do with their animals. Allegedly, Don wanted to breed and sell the animals, while Carol was against this and wanted to focus solely on rescuing. On August 19th, 1997, Carol Lewis reported her husband Don missing. The only trace of him was his van, which was found at a remote airport that was about a half hour away from the couple's home, and reportedly his keys were left inside of it. Carol would later recount the events that led up to her husband's disappearance. She said that after 11 p.m. on August 17th, 1997, she had run out to buy some ingredients for kitten formula. She said that the store she drove to was closed and that her car had overheated. After failing to reach Don by phone, she walked 6 miles back to their home. She says that just a few hours later, in the early morning hours of August 18th, that Don left to prepare for a business trip and that this was the last time she saw him. One rumor that was shared by Don's lawyer, Joe Fritz, was that he heard that Don, who was an amateur pilot, may have been strangled and thrown from a plane over the Gulf of Mexico. This theory was tested by 48 Hours correspondent Richard Schlesinger. Yeah. Who is a pilot and flies the same type of plane that Don was known to fly. He took his Piper aeroplane to analyze the theory that Don may have been strangled and thrown from an airplane, but he reported that it would have been very difficult for the plane door to even open, especially with hurricane winds approaching and pushing against it. At the time of Don's disappearance, a woman named Trish Farr Payne was married to Don and Carol's handyman, Kenny Farr. She told 48 Hours that she remembers her husband coming home 2 days prior to Don being reported missing, and he was driving Don's van, and that the van was full of Don's guns. She says that Kenny told her, "Don's gone, and I don't want you talking about him." She also said that she remembered a large freezer appearing on their front porch around the time that Don disappeared, but that it vanished about a week later. My curiosity would have never let that sit there without me looking in it. Or at least trying to look in it.
Right.
Trish would also say that during a heated exchange she was having with Kenny, that he told her, "If you try to leave me again, I will put you in the grinder like I did Don." It wasn't until years later, while in the middle of their divorce, that she would go to police and tell them that she suspected Kenny had something to do with Don's disappearance. Kenny Farr responded to her request for comment by 48 Hours in an email saying that Trish's story is an outlandish lie. He went on to say that he had nothing to do with the disappearance of Don Lewis. In 2002, 5 years after he went missing, Don Lewis's case had grown cold and a judge declared Don legally dead. Carol had continued to run the animal rescue by herself, but did have some new plans for wildlife on Easy Street. As we all know, or at least those of us who were obsessed with Tiger King back in 2020, Carol remarried to Howard Baskin, and they turned wildlife on Easy Street into Big Cat Rescue, with a mission to ban the private possession of exotic cats. On her website, Carol also began to condemn those whom she called animal abusers, including Joe Exotic. This led to a feud that resulted in Joe Exotic being sentenced to prison for attempting to hire someone to kill Carol, and this all unfolded on the documentary series that over 60 million people tuned into, the local sheriff of Tampa being one of them. He used this opportunity to bring attention back to Don Lewis's case and requested that if anyone has any information on his case to call the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department in Florida. Don's daughters have offered a reward that was donated to them of $100,000 for any information that helps to solve this case. We're hoping that with these funds, someone will have the courage to come forward and provide the information necessary to solve this case, said Donna Pettis, Don's eldest daughter, at a press conference announcing the reward. In 2021, Carol did an interview with a UK television outlet and said that Don was alive and well in Costa Rica. However, the sheriff's office said that he is still listed as a missing person on their website, with the public information officer, Fentress Fountain, saying, "We have not received any communication from our federal partners that confirms the location of missing person Mr. Don Lewis. The investigation into Don Lewis's disappearance remains a priority for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, as do all missing person cases." Also at this time, detectives said that investigators had conducted 50 interviews and followed up on 200 leads. They added that Baskin had refused requests for interview on 3 occasions, as did the former handyman Kenny Farr. Baskin said at that time that she had initially assisted law enforcement with the case through interviews, continued correspondence, and access to the Big Cat Rescue property. "There is nothing that I know that is not either in the sheriff's files or in the diary I have published at savethecats.org. And no way am I going to have a clearer memory or anything to add 24 years later. Which I think she's got a point there, but
I still think she killed him.
I don't know.
Anyway.
But
is that your last story?
that was my last story.
So I have two more. I have Rico Harris. Rico Harris he was a basketball player, first of all.
Yeah.
So in high school, this dude was already like 6 foot 8 inches and 215 pounds. He was a big dude.
Yeah.
One of the best basketball players you've seen. Like, he was a top recruit for college, all this, all right? So then he went to Arizona State and played. However, in March of 96, he was arrested on charge of unlawful imprisonment with 2 other of his teammates because 2 women stepped up saying that they had taken them and, like, forced them to do dirty things. So then he basically kind of disappeared from there at that point.
Yeah.
So then he went back into Los Angeles City College, which is like a junior college, and he dominated on the court there. The coach there said that he was Lamar Odom before there was a Lamar Odom. So then at that point, they had like their best season they've ever had. I'm about to have to go blow my nose again. Hold on. Time out. Fill the air. Sorry, because I'm about to drink.
Here, I'll just pause. Okay.
Sorry for that. My nose was dripping. Anyway, so he went back to basketball at California Community College. They had like the best season they've ever had. He was gonna go back into the NCAA for a 4-year college. But he failed a class, and some people think that he did it deliberately so that he wouldn't have to move away from his family. So then, he kind of started drinking, like big time.
Yeah.
Which cost him a lot of recruits, a lot of relationships, stuff like that.
Yeah.
He ended up going and playing like semi-professional basketball. And then he got in with the Harlem Globetrotters for a little bit because, I mean, he was doing like crazy no-look passes, you know, crazy stuff. And he went after he joined the team. He was out and about in Los Angeles driving around with his girlfriend or whatever, and he got into a dispute, and he got out of the car to confront these people, and they hit him in the back of the head with a baseball bat.
Oh no.
He left the scene and drove off, but then started having like really, really, really bad headaches and had trouble keeping his balance.
Yeah.
So he had to leave the Globetrotters because it turned into like a long-term situation.
Yeah.
So at the age of 24, his basketball career was done for. So then at that point, he moved back home, had no job, no nothing. He started drinking. It was like addiction was a huge deal at that point.
Yeah.
Not only was he drinking, but he was also doing like heroin, meth, crack, all this. Just whatever. And then he'd get in trouble for public intoxication. He'd be begging in the streets. It was just a whole ordeal. He overdosed on prescription medicine, went into rehab, and then he met another girl. They got together. They were like talking about getting married and stuff. And then, hold on, let me scoot back over here. He ended up, like, he was leaving his mom's house to go spend a weekend at his girlfriend's house.
Yeah.
And it was like known, he was known for like having times of disappearing for a couple days at a time or whatever, and then he just turned back up. But he left his mom's house to go spend the weekend with his girlfriend, and all he had was his backpack and his phone. Well, then he stopped in Lodi, which is like south of Sacramento, to get gas. And then he called his girlfriend, left a message saying that he was going somewhere to rest. And then he turned his phone off. And then no one's heard from him since.
Oh, wow.
His car, his phone, and his bag were found.
Yeah.
But they weren't able to find his body anywhere near. And there was actually a video of him on his phone.
Yeah.
But they found nothing since then.
Wow. Poor guy.
Right. And then my last one is Scott Smith, who is a musician. He is from... Do what?
I was saying that name sounds familiar.
He's from the band Loverboy.
Yeah.
I feel
he was
like...
on my short list.
Was he?
Yeah.
So basically, with him, it was also a disappearance at sea in 2000. He had played a gig in Vancouver at a benefit for Juvenile Diabetes Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
He, 2 friends, and his girlfriend set out for Mexico on a sailboat, and they sailed down the coast near and got close to like San Francisco. Weather got rough, and they estimated that a wave that was around about 20 feet high knocked him overboard and into the water. They had turned the ship around to go back, but they couldn't find anything at all. Whenever the call came in that something had happened, Coast Guard helicopters had arrived within 20 minutes and 2 search boats were dispatched. They scoured 133 square mile area but found nothing.
Wow.
So he has still, to this day, there has been zero anything that surfaced.
Damn, that's crazy. That reminds me of not too long ago, there was, I want to say it was either like prom or it was like a family vacation or something. This like teenage boy thought it would be cute to jump off the ship they were on or the boat they were on in like the middle of the ocean, and he was never found.
Oh.
Yeah.
In the middle of the ocean, he got eat.
Yeah.
By like a megalodon or something.
Megalodon.
Okay. So I have the nonprofit, this one.
Yeah.
This one I actually pulled a U, and I got this one off of TikTok. In a very and this lady wasn't even throwing this out there to gain attention to her nonprofit. She was telling a story. So like basically she works for a vet, and like this woman, something was wrong with her dog, and she had taken it to another vet, and they didn't have the money to do the diagnostics to try and figure out what was going on with the dog. So she was calling around to different vets trying to get advice. Mm-hmm. And so they can't really talk to her if she's not one of their patients.
Yeah. I feel like I know what you're talking about.
I may have sent it to you. I don't know. But like they couldn't really talk to her because she wasn't one of the patients. But the lady like sat there and she really thought about it. And like she talked to the lady a little bit about it. And then like told the lady, okay, here's what I think you should do. And then like the next day she ended up texting her and saying, listen, how's everything going? She just wanted to check on her.
Yeah.
And ended up, she was like, I have a nonprofit that I just started. She was like, the nonprofit helped her pay for what she needed to pay for to get this dog on the up and up. Yeah. It's called Spirit's Legacy Fund. It says, years after a little black puppy was found and in need of medical attention, Spirit's Legacy Fund was created so that no pet suffers and no family has to say goodbye to a beloved animal with a curable condition due to financial restrictions. Dr. Michelle Forbes founded SLF in June 2015, soon after the opening of Compassionate Care Animal Hospital. This veterinary practice of well-seasoned doctors and staff very familiar with the stress of caring for sick or injured animals, intended for Spirit's Legacy Fund to help families mitigate the costs when faced with difficult decisions about what medical treatments to pursue in order to care for their pets. The fund, it says that 99% of the money donated is used for patients' medical expenses. The compassionate care animal hospitals, caring and compassionate clients are the primary source of donations, which are supplemented by our participation in the Ann Arbor Art Fair and other events hosted at the clinic to raise money. Families who benefit from the fund must meet certain criteria, as well as pay a portion of their bill with their own funds and then, if you learn, we'll have a link for you to learn more about it. But I thought it was a pretty cool deal because I do, even me as a pet owner, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm not the most responsible pet owner there ever was.
Yeah. I do my best.
Right. And have I ever been faced with a situation where I'm like, oh, my kid is sick, but I don't really have the money to take them to the doctor, so I'm just not going to? Absolutely not. My kids always go to the doctor when they need to. Yeah. But have there been times when I'm like, oh, something's going on with the dog, let me wait it out for a couple of days because I really don't have the money, or they're going to have to wait a week or two because I don't have the money.
Like with your kids, you've got health insurance.
Right.
With a dog, and then most vets don't take payment plans. They don't do payment plans.
And I mean, you can get pet insurance, but
it usually does not pay for shit.
Well, and how often are you actually going to use it? Because I don't take my dogs to the vet unless they need to go to the vet.
Yeah.
And with Juno, so a lot of you listeners probably don't know, at one point in time, I had a golden retriever. She just kind of landed in our lap.
Yeah.
She was a year and a half old when we got her. TJ was at work. Some guy walks into his work and was like, hey, I've got this golden retriever, fully papered, full-blooded golden retriever, absolutely gorgeous. We can't keep her for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Do you want her? And he just walked in out of nowhere. There was no no conversation prior to this that would have led this man to believe that anybody there would have wanted this dog. So I was working the next town over, and TJ called and said, hey, when you get off work, come to the store. This dude's going to meet you here with the dog.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this dog? And he's like, take it home. So I get there. She's gorgeous. She was the most beautiful golden retriever. Most well-mannered dog I've ever had. She didn't bark unless there was a reason to bark.
Right.
And you know how, most dogs, most animals, really, if they're laying in the middle of the floor and you go to step over them, they're going to get up and try and get out of the way, but it ends up tripping you more. No, she just laid there. Because she didn't want you to trip.
Yeah.
She was already housebroken. She wasn't, over rambunctious. I've never had a more well-mannered dog. We'd put her on a leash when take her places, but I'm fully convinced that I didn't have to.
Right.
She always came when she was called. She was the best. I've never had a better dog.
Yeah.
She's such a sweetheart. I feel like even though your allergies ran rampant whenever you were around her, you loved her, did you not?
Oh, yeah. She's a good dog.
But when he gave her to us, something I had noticed, one side of her nose was, swollen almost.
Yeah.
And so he said, oh, that's nothing. She's got, just a growth or whatever in there that the vet promised us was nothing. And in order for them to remove it, they'd have to remove her canine tooth. And it's just not worth it. And they said it would be fine. It's not keeping her from being able to breathe, nothing. And it wasn't.
Right.
Everything with it was perfectly fine. We didn't see any issues with it, nothing, until later on in life. And every once in a blue moon, I'm talking every, 3-4 months, it would you'd notice that she'd have a little bit of something snot running out of her nose.
Yeah.
And then for a couple months, it was it would start bleeding and it stunk so bad. Mm-hmm. And by that point, it was too late.
Yeah.
It was a tumor. And so she had one day where she just started sneezing, and it was like a murder scene everywhere she went because it was a constant sneeze fest because she had this in her nose.
Yeah.
And so I took her to the vet, and they were like, there's nothing we can do. And like, that's one of the hardest situations ever. Had I been a little bit more proactive with it, because we had taken her to the vet for other stuff and they had asked about it.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, if it's giving her issues, we really need to take a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Had I been a little bit more proactive about it, she would have had a longer life. We would have had her for a little bit longer. Now, would I have my Ellie if we had done that? No.
No, probably not.
I'm not even sure we still have Loki because she hated him. They were only together for like, what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, something like that. Oh, hi, Ziggy.
But it was always an issue of, I know this is going to cost me a couple $1,000, and I don't have that.
Yeah.
And I mean, even the day that we had to put her down, I was concerned with how much it was going to cost.
Right.
But like, just for the dogs that I have, vet care is expensive.
It is very expensive.
Ellie,
and I think it's kind of messed up. The only option is they tell you get care credit.
Right.
And the interest on that is insane.
Oh, yeah. Well, like with Ellie, right after we got her, because, she was a shelter dog.
Yeah.
Right after we got her, she had worms.
Yeah.
And so I took her to the vet just to get her dewormed.
Mm-hmm.
$400.
Yeah.
Just to get her dewormed. When I'm like, I could have gone to Tractor Supply.
Yeah.
Do I love my vet? Absolutely. I will never take my pets anywhere else.
No.
I absolutely love this vet. And the vet that we see there is kind of like, he's old.
Yeah.
And when something happens to him, I'm going to be real upset.
Right.
Because he's the best. And he remembers us every time we go in there. He like, after we put Juno down, we had to take Loki in a couple weeks later or whatever for his, because he was still really young.
Yeah.
He was still getting puppy shots and stuff. And he asked, how's everybody adapting? I'm so sorry about it, or about Juno. And, he remembers.
Right.
And every time we take them in there, he asks questions. And then the last time we had to take Ellie in there, he's like, man, she's gotten big. She ain't been there in a while. Wait till I take her in for her heartworm stuff.
Yeah.
He gonna be like, this is not the same dog. Brother, I assure you that it is, with her 45-pound self.
Old freckle butt.
You know what I had a realization of?
Mm-mm.
When animals get older, especially dogs, they start turning white,
Yeah.
How are we gonna know? She white. Is her freckle butt gonna turn white? Like,
probably her freckle will turn white.
Loki has one white hair. He's only a year old. One singular. I actually plucked it the other day, but because I thought it was an Ellie hair, just kind of
stuck in there.
Yeah, I plucked it, but
I like it when like Willow will look at me and she got like a black hair sticking out of her forehead, and I'll be like, "You been fighting with Amara again?"
Right.
Well, I think that's about all I got in me.
Yep. Make sure that you're sending us your stories.
Yes.
They ain't even gonna be spooky stories. Give us some entertaining stories.
Yeah.
Just give us
bad dates. We love that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. Give us the drama.
Yeah.
We're thirsty. We want the tea. The hotter the better, even though I really don't like hot tea. But I like this hot tea.
Yeah.
Get it, Ziggy? He's over here purring like none other.
Let's see if I can.
He purrs so loud.
Yeah, he's really loud.
Is it picking it up?
I don't know. A little bit. But not really. It's okay.
But you can send those stories to our email at wanderersofweird@gmail.com. That was weird. Or you can follow us at Facebook, or on Facebook,
Instagram,
TikTok,
X, I guess.
We might as well just delete that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that just kind of exists.
You'll be glad when I go home.
Yeah. And then Daniel will come home.
Right.
It'll be just the same thing, but smellier.
Started to say, mine don't stink. Anyway. All right. Well, we'll see you next time.
See you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.